Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I am excited to bring you this episode with Allie Bloyd. Allie owns a company called Allie Bloyd Media.com, and we are going to demystify digital marketing. That's right, we're going to demystify digital marketing. What do I mean by that? Digital marketing has, like anything, that for a success path to be achieved, it has stages and steps. And the challenge is most people never explain the challenges that are within, but they only explain what their secret sauce is and how that solves the problem. And they're missing stages, they're missing steps. And so if you're missing stages and steps, it's like having 26 letters in the alphabet and missing out on a few letters. You know, let's say you're missing T and missing C, and we go to spell cat, right? It's going to sound like A, but you get a word out there, but it's not hitting your audience in the way you want them to. So what we want to do is we want to understand the stages and the steps within the stages. And Allie and I are going to lay these out in this episode so that you will understand one of two things that you can do at the end. A, you want to learn more and you want to train on this, and you now know the stages and steps. So now you're going to know what to train on. So it's not just learning a little secret sauce, trying to put that in play and finding out, oh, you don't have the foundation. Or B, you're going to learn and say, okay, I know these stages and steps and I want to outsource this. Second part's really important. And the reason it's so important is you can be in a $15,000 to $40,000 mistake, $15,000 to $40,000 mistake before you even know what happens when you're outsourcing this to people who frankly tell you they know what they're doing, but they do not in the capacity of what you need. So without further ado, let's go talk to Allie. Before we do, I want to pre-frame this and say this is going to be a long episode, and it's purposely long because I wanted to make sure that you got all the content, and Allie was so gracious to give her time and bring her A game to the interview. So without further ado, let's go speak with Allie Bloyd. Hey, Allie, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Super excited to be here with you today, Doug.
So I'm super excited for you. You have a new addition to your family. Congratulations. And
thank you so much.
You know, for someone who just had a child, you look wide awake. So I'm very happy for you and very appreciative of you being here.
Thank you. Yeah, you know what? It's all a ruse.
Some people do it on 5-hour energy. You just do it on pure
excitement.
So we are going to talk about what you're an expert at is really demystifying digital marketing for people. There's so many people out there trying to figure out, how do I do digital marketing? What do I do? What do I not do? They're spending tons of money on things, frankly, that they shouldn't, A, or B, just doesn't work. And I hear it all the time. They're frustrated. So if I could ask, the first question is, what's the difference between, say, marketing in general and digital marketing?
Truthfully, there isn't a tremendous difference. Ultimately, the way that I like to teach marketing is from an approach that if you do it the right way, you should be able to use this with offline marketing strategies and online marketing strategies. Because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is show someone why they might need our product or service and convince them to buy our product and service. We just want to reach them where they are. So if they are watching TV, we might want to be there. If they're online, which so many people are these days, we want to meet them there. It could even relate to direct mail strategies. So the core of marketing isn't that different, but the beauty of digital marketing compared to what I would call more traditional marketing approaches is definitely the ability to track on a much more granular level. We're able to see which specific ads drove someone to action. We're able to see really their customer journey in a way that we were never able to before. before, even if we were asking people how they heard about us, maybe they would mark off TV commercial, but really they got a direct mail piece and they, saw an ad online and then they saw the TV commercial, but we're only able to track that one thing based on what they said. So with the correct approach to digital marketing, you should be able to see each and every step that someone takes to enter your ecosystem, the steps that they take to kind of establish that trust with your business, and then ultimately the steps that they're taking to finally convert to either purchase that product or that service.
So if I understand correctly, I'm able to pinpoint where they're coming from, their activity or behavior that's happening. And it's not subjective, like, hey, I think I came from a direct mail piece, or I think somebody told me about you, or whatever. You're able to say, look, this ad's producing this many people. This is where this person came from. Here's the activity they went through. They took and clicked on this link and went to this web page and filled in this form and did X, Y, and Z. And so we're able to track all those metrics. So we can actually, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if we track these metrics, we can actually with predictability say, hey, if we're doing this, we should be converting at X because we've had a consistent flow of this over time.
Absolutely. So, with a service-based business primarily, there are obviously going to be other factors in the mix, things that you're extremely familiar with, such as sales. There is that human component that is happening to get someone to buy most of the time in a service-based business. Whereas if you're looking strictly at an e-commerce store, for example, that's going to be a lot more cut and dry. You are able to see every single metric on those platforms and identify, which pages need to be tweaked or optimized, and the cart checkout process, all of those things. When it comes to service-based business, we're going to be able to see all of the digital metrics, but there has to be the human tracking element of the actual sales conversion rates. But if you can do that, which everyone should be doing that, you will absolutely have this predictable selling system, which is like how I like to refer to it. That's what most businesses are looking for. They want to know, if I invest this much into advertising, what is my expected return? And that has traditionally been a very, very difficult thing for someone to say, you can expect to receive exactly this much. And while it is difficult to tell someone exactly how much they're going to see in terms of ROI before their campaigns begin, once you have the data on the ad side and the sales side, you should be able to pinpoint with really, really near accuracy what type of revenue a certain ad spend is going to be able to bring in. So it really illuminates things that most business owners have been somewhat oblivious to in the past. And it also shows them exactly where their efforts need to be focused in order to get the results that they're looking for.
By the way, folks, we're talking with Allie Bloyd, alliebloydmedia.com. And we're speaking about demystifying digital marketing today for you, because so many people are just so confused about this subject. Now, I agree with you 100%. On the sales side, we have to be tracking our metrics too. And that's where I specialize in, right? So we're just constantly tracking those because we can say, oh, okay, this person's been contacted 3-4 times, or this person's not been contacted, or this person downloaded this report or got this report and they're buying 23% more than these people. I mean, that's what it is on the sales side. You're doing the same on the marketing side. And you and I had a conversation just recently. And what I loved about what our conversation was, on an offline play, to test whether that offline play works or not is so much more costly than it is on an online play. I mean, you and I were talking about a potential of a $2,000 test budget. And I mean, I know from even running focus groups, I mean, you could spend 15 grand easily on one focus group. So offline tends to, from what I can see, is so much more costly to get the test abortion done versus online. Why is that so?
So a couple of different things. I think the first thing to point out is that you can very easily blow a lot of money testing on digital campaigns in the same way that you would on offline campaigns if you don't know what you're doing. If you don't have previous data to pull from, previous experience in terms of what type of campaigns you should be running, what type of copy or creative or audience you should be using, what type of objectives, where to send people. So having that knowledge beforehand is obviously critical in setting up campaigns the right way so that you can avoid the wasted ad spend. That really is the goal, to stop taking money and just throwing it in the trash can. We do want to be willing to spend whatever is necessary to get the data that we need to grow our business. But most people, they're still spending a significant amount of money on these campaigns, but they're not actually really generating much data from it because they don't know what they're looking for. The campaigns were never structured the right way to begin with. And they're also not closing the loop on the marketing and the sales side. So exactly like what you were just talking about, on your end, you're tracking these sales metrics really religiously. Well, we have to do that on the marketing side, but we really have to connect the dots on both of them. Otherwise, you're always missing a huge piece of the picture. So the reason that it historically has been so difficult to test on the offline campaigns is because the tracking was never very good. So you might test 5 different TV commercials. Maybe those 5 different TV commercials are running at different times of the day on different stations. Maybe some of those stations, they're running at a higher frequency. You really had no way of knowing which of those commercials, which of those stations are actually driving the business. You might be able to say, okay, they came from TV, but where in TV did they come from? So it made it incredibly difficult to take your dollars and really focus them in on the areas that were producing the greatest return. There are ways to track those types of campaigns using digital. This is something I do love to help business owners with, is taking those campaigns that can still work very, very well if done correctly and say, okay, how can we approach this from square one where testing and tracking is our primary goal? And that's, using very specific offers, using specific media buying strategies, even if you are on TV or radio, really buying the programming in a certain way. And then also using certain calls to action, certain destinations that you're sending them to, and then having the right digital in place on the back end to track those things, because virtually everything is interconnected. It is really, really common for people to see you in 3 or 4 different places before they convert. So we don't want to rely on just the last attribution, that last step that somebody's going to take before they either convert to a sales call or convert to a customer. We want to pay really close attention to first attribution as well, and then all of those steps in between. So I do think that, again, it's so easy to say, we can get a lot more out of our testing budget on digital. It is true, you can, but most people still fail to do that because they just don't know what it is they're even testing in the first place, how to even analyze the metrics. I mean, that's a big challenge for people. They look at an ads manager dashboard and they say, well, what am I even looking at here? What do these numbers mean? What is a baseline or a benchmark for these numbers? If one number is high or low, what does that tell me about how this ad could have performed or why it performed the way that it did? So ultimately, being really data focused, no matter what type of marketing you're doing, is always going to help you make more of your testing budget and your budget long term, because everything we need to know is very clear in the numbers if you only know what you're looking for.
And that's what your company helps people with as well, right?
Absolutely.
I remember Jay Conrad Levinson, when he was alive, he wrote a book series called the Guerrilla Marketing Book Series. And I asked Jay, I said, Jay, what's marketing really about? And he said, it's about 2 things: data focus, tracking the data, and being patient. He said, those are the 2 things. And he said, those are the 2 things that most people don't do in marketing. Therefore, they don't succeed the way they want to in marketing. And he said, you can make mistakes even when you know what you're doing, but when you're tracking the data, it's far less. He said, before we were tracking the data, he gave me an example. He worked on, there was a commercial called the Marlboro Man, and back, I think in the 70s when it was there.
Yeah.
And Jay told me that they spent $5 million before they actually started really looking at how to make the Marlboro Man work. And I remember when I used to buy radio, like for Chet Holmes and Tony Robbins, we would sometimes test a radio ad, but that radio ad would cost us anywhere between 5 and 15 grand just to test it.
Yeah.
So when I'm hearing numbers like, hey, you can test on, $1,000, $2,000 or whatever, that is so much more economical, and you can pinpoint, because in radio, I mean, you can look at the numbers, but it's really, well, did it work or didn't it work? As a campaign, you don't have the granularity that I can see what you're talking about on the tracking on the online side. So I wanted to ask a question on this because, Allie, I don't know. So can we run an online ad that would actually, or online, and get the data and then say, hey, this is possible that it might also work offline as well? Like if I took my online statistics and I said, well, here, these are all working online, Would that give me more viability to test something like a radio ad and do that more effectively?
I think yes and no. The truth is that the things that work on radio and TV are often very different compared to what works on something like a social platform or a search ad. And I can kind of explain the reasoning behind that. But there are absolutely different insights that you can gain from a digital campaign that can 100% help you on a radio or TV ad. So I think the first thing is always the offer. If an offer is solid, you should be able to use that offer anywhere. It does not matter what the platform is, the offer should still be viable. And what I really mean is the front end offer typically, because most businesses are going to have a front end offer and then likely they're going to have a back end offer as well. So what is the offer that we're presenting to the general public to get them in the door or to start that conversation for the very first time? So if an offer works on social where people are not out there searching for you, they're not looking for this solution, which is similar to what you'd find on TV and radio, then you can definitely take that information and put it into a campaign such as that. Some of the other things that you can really benefit from is, learning more about your customer avatar. Most business owners that are putting together radio or TV commercials, they're typically not that avatar focused. They may not even know what a customer avatar is half of the time. But what you're able to do on social is so much more in terms of audience interest, audience behaviors. What are the other things that they like? We have the ability to communicate two ways with our audience on online platforms where it is simply one-way communication on TV and radio. We don't get to see their comments. We don't get to hear their thoughts on that in real time, but we can see that from an ad. So if you launch an ad, obviously the most important thing is how it's performing in terms of return on investment. But you also really want to pay attention to the questions that people are asking or the comments that they're making about the ad itself. If you can continue to look at that data and find ways to roll that into your messaging, you're going to be a lot more successful. You're also going to be able to find avatars through your digital that you probably weren't even aware of, that you could have specific campaigns that are offline that kind of center around those. And if you are focusing on a specific avatar, that likely is going to impact the creative of the ad. It's going to impact what stations you're running that ad on, maybe the times of day that those are running. So much about your audience can really be learned from digital. And then I also think, again, just kind of the customer journey as a whole. A lot of times on TV and radio, most businesses are just direct to offer, core offer 100% of the time. And a lot of times it's a pretty big ask. So it's only going to appeal to the smallest percentage of your market, which is usually about, 3% of the population of people who could actually use what you have. There could be about 15% more people that need what you have, but they don't actually know it yet. Those people are likely not going to jump at the opportunity to take you up on this big ask the first, even the first several times that they hear from you. What they might need is something that's more informational initially, more educational initially. It's not something we see a ton on TV and radio. Those strategies work very, very well on digital, but you don't see people using those in traditional marketing very often. And I think it's mainly because, number one, they're scared of wasting money. They think if they don't go direct to the sale, that they're not going to make sales and that they're going to throw their budget in the trash. They also don't have that ability to track. So they've never really seen the customer journey up close and personal. So they don't understand how a content focused piece or an educational focused piece drives those ideal customers through their door or into their sales process, like we're able to see with digital. So one example of a local business that I work with a lot is kitchen and bath remodelers. And there is a specific offer for kitchen and bath remodelers that I have used time and time and time again. And every single time it is the best performing offer. And that's something called Kitchen and Bath University. This is an educational seminar in person where people who are thinking about remodeling can come and learn about kitchen and bath remodeling. This is a very large scale project. It's intimidating. It's confusing. It's expensive. people are scared to throw their money away or to start on something that's, bigger than what they anticipate, or even to give their money to the wrong person. So by driving people to this event, you are able to build trust with them. You're able to educate them. You're able to really connect with them in a way that you are not able to do in any other sales scenario, because you're positioning yourself as that expert. You're right there in front of them. You can answer those questions and they don't feel like they're being sold. So by the time you get to that pitch at the end, they're already sold if they were sellable. If they were not quite ready to remodel anyway, then they're still likely going to have you at the top of their list, but they may be 6 months down the road. They may be a year down the road. That's often how early people start investigating and gathering information around these projects. What most contractors do is they focus on the people who are in that final month before they get started. And at that point, they might have 5 other contractors that they're talking to, 5 other quotes that they're getting. You're just another person in the mix. You are not any different than those other companies. An offer like this sets you apart. So you're casting the widest possible net, which is what you want to do on something like TV or radio, and oftentimes what you might want to do on something like social. And then through that offer, you're able to sell far more and a lot of times higher dollar amounts. So we found that those leads converted easier, they converted faster, they bought more at the end of the day, and they were actually better customers to work with because they had been fully educated on the process before they ever got started. So that is something that you might really start by advertising on something like social. And once you see how well this works, you start promoting it in your TV commercials. I've had clients that run this offer every single month. So every month they have one of these events going on. That means you can continue to run your TV ads, continue to run your radio ads, focused not only on getting someone to buy from you, but focused on getting them to a page that tells them when the event is taking place and allowing them to reserve their seat. So it might sound counterintuitive to a lot of people based on what they typically would do, but those are things that if you can see the quality of lead, the excitement of the people who are either registering for that event or showing up to that event through a social campaign, you then can very easily say, hey, why wouldn't this work in our other forms of advertising, direct mail included? So I do think there's so much crossover. And at the end of the day, the data does give you the confidence to know what pieces can translate to other types of campaigns. And that educational component, I think, is what's missing from a lot of the more traditional marketing methods.
So we're speaking with Allie Bloyd from Allie Bloyd Media. That's ALLIEBLOYD Media, MEDIA.com. Allie, I was writing this down. So let's say I don't know really what I'm doing. Should I start with like a solid offer first, or learning about the client avatar first, or the customer journey first? What would be step one?
So typically step one is going to be understanding your customer. The offer is probably the most critical component of any campaign, but if you don't understand your ideal customers, you're going to have a hard time creating an offer that speaks to them. So let's go back to the example I just used, Kitchen and Bath University. If I think that my primary avatar is a 50-year-old man, I may not create a campaign that's focused on this educational seminar, because I would say that 80% of the attendees were always female, because a lot of times females are more inclined to do the research first. Maybe the man in the relationship might be kind of handling it once it gets started, but that female is really the one that is pushing that project along up until the point where maybe they start to meet with different companies. And even sometimes after, obviously, for design choices, budgeting, things that a lot of times the female is really focused on. So if you didn't realize that that female, that 35 to 55 suburban female with a really high interest in value, a high interest in design and understanding what she's purchasing, if you don't know that's who you're speaking to, you're not going to create the offer that will best deliver to her. So we have to know who it is we're talking to, what they want, but also what they might think they want that isn't actually what they need. So a lot of the times, if you just ask people directly, they might tell you something, but it doesn't actually mean that it's the right offer to present to them. So sometimes people need a little taste before they're ready for that, bigger picture, similar to what we talked about with the event. That might mean you're going for a more entry point offer or a loss leader. If you are somebody who doesn't really have the ability to do that, you might have to present your business services kind of as a whole. But the question is, how do you frame that? What is the messaging around that? So definitely getting super, super detailed on who it is you're serving. There's at least going to be two main groups that you're focused on. So dialing that in as much as possible. There's always going to be testing that goes on involving your audiences and the people that you're reaching, but there are a lot of different audiences that could still produce that same type of avatar for you. We don't want to waste time or money on channels or audiences that just aren't where your ideal customer is going to be hanging out. From there, it is all about the offer, because if your offer stinks, it does not matter how good your ads are, how good your audiences are. And I like to use this analogy, the old saying, I could sell ice to an Eskimo. Well, maybe the best salesperson could sell ice to an Eskimo, but why are you trying to sell ice to an Eskimo? An Eskimo does not need ice. They have all the ice that they can handle. So you're just swimming upstream. This is an uphill battle for you. You should be selling ice to someone in the desert. So let's get clear on who we're talking to. And then the offer becomes so much easier because we know what to present to them. And sometimes in what order. It could just be a difference in the level of knowledge of that avatar. Maybe it's the exact same type of person, but one person is far more educated on the subject than another. So me, for example, I work with small business owners, but I also work with marketers that serve small business owners. That marketer is typically a little bit more knowledgeable on the digital side than that small business owner is. So I need to talk to that group a little bit more about the technical nuts and bolts. Whereas that small business owner, I really need to talk to them about, the outcome that they're looking for, or the challenges that they have that they might not even know there's a solution for, or maybe they know solutions, but they feel just really overwhelmed at the prospect. So if I start speaking to them in a lot of technical mumbo jumbo from the beginning, they are going to immediately put up a wall and say, I can't do this. So again, sometimes it's just the messaging surrounding your offer. The offer might be exactly the same for both groups, but how you do be significantly different. After we have our offer, at least pinpoint to the point of, I'm ready to test this, because before you test an offer, it's just an idea. Basically, you need the data to validate if this offer is actually going to work. And that becomes the biggest challenge. Most people think, hey, if I try this platform and I run these ads and they don't produce a return, the platforms don't work. They don't work for a business like mine. Not realizing how many variables they actually have the ability to kind of pull these levers on, the offer being the most significant. And then obviously the technical implementation of the campaigns is really important. I see so many people run what's called a traffic campaign when really they want leads and they want appointments. The traffic campaign is going to give you clicks, but it is very rarely going to give you good leads and appointments. So if that's the type of campaign you're running, same thing. Doesn't matter how good your offer is. Doesn't matter how good your audience is. You might still see some results, but they're going to pale in comparison to what you would see if you would just run that campaign correctly. So we've got the audience aspect, the offer aspect, the campaign aspect, and then there's the follow-up and the nurture and everything that's happening after someone clicks on the ad. So kind of four main groups that you have to get right, all of those elements in order to have a really winning campaign. But every single dollar that you spend on these campaigns should get you one step closer to being able to have something that is just producing day in and day out, as long as you're willing to pay attention to it and make the tweaks and adjustments that are necessary. So that's where the patience that you mentioned earlier really comes into play. It's not always snap of the finger, and people are really in this instant gratification mindset, more so today than ever before. And if you really want to make something spectacular for your business, you've got to be willing to give it the time that it actually takes and be willing to spend the money that it takes before you have that optimal ROI.
Yeah. All right. I was writing down these things as you were speaking, so I'm going to try to put them in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Correct me if I get the order wrong, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first, learning about your ideal client avatar. Step number 2, then creating a solid offer with messaging and on the front end sale. Then 3 would be testing that front end offer. Then 4, is going to be, well, in that you're going to look at the data, adjust, try again, and keep massaging that. As you're doing that, 4 will be defining the client or the customer journey through the process. And then 5 is, which includes follow-up, nurturing, all of that. And 5 would be then you're going to run to another back-end offer, which is ultimately where you want to get to in the first place. Did I miss anything?
That is really the overall path that anybody wants to follow. So when it comes to like that testing, definitely the setup of the campaign, understanding the platforms you're using, I would kind of lump that in. But yeah, that is the gist of it.
All right, I'm a good student then today.
Absolutely.
All right. We're speaking with Allie Bloyd, alliebloydmedia.com. Allie, thanks for bringing your A game here today. I have 2 more questions, if you'll indulge me for a little longer here. We were talking about when you're running a campaign or something, you were mentioning like level 1, level 2, level 3. Could you explain that, please, for myself and for people?
Absolutely. So as somebody who is really focused on sales, I think that this is something you're absolutely going to be familiar with and is going to make a lot of sense to you, because the way that we approach marketing and setting up our campaigns is very much the same way that you should approach sales. And that is with the understanding that people typically do not convert the first time that you speak to them or the first time that they hear from you. So I think the stat is, there's anywhere between 8 and 32 touch points required before that typical conversion is going to take place. And those touch points could be ads. They could be manual follow-up with a real human, speaking to somebody, texting with somebody. It could be email drip campaigns. It could be different types of content. It could be, getting on the phone with a salesperson. All of those touch points add up. And you might have that rare occurrence where someone who's never heard of you, they've never seen anything from you, they see your ad for the very first time, they click, they sign up, they buy, they become the best customer, but that is obviously going to be the exception and not the rule. So going back to kind of what we talked about with that offer, that kitchen and bath university example, in that type of business, and really every type of business, there is some form of knowledge that people need to know, either because they're seeking it out and they're really kind of, researching and investigating these things, or maybe it's something that they don't even know they don't know. You want to start warming up that cold traffic audience by giving them great content, great value, or just making them more familiar with you and your company as a whole. So doing that is most easily done through video and video ad campaigns. You can say so much more. You can really have someone feel like they know you through those videos so that by the time they speak to you, you already have that connection formed essentially. That's something that's really challenging to do in any other format. So level 1 is education, engagement, and awareness. We're here to build a warm audience, build trust, and build credibility. So educational videos are my favorite way to do it. Maybe sharing tips and insights, things like that. You can also do it through storytelling. Maybe it's, through your founder's story. There's probably a dozen founder stories that any one business could have, just about why you decided to get started, what your first month in business was like, or your first year, how you hired your first team members, how your business evolved. All of these things allow people to get to know you and your company a lot more. And I think we're in an age where people don't just buy from businesses because they need something or because it's the lowest price or the highest quality. They buy because they really like the people behind the brand. And so having your personality come through and your very unique knowledge and experience, whatever that may be, is really laying the foundation for the rest of your campaigns. So that's level 1, is getting people to engage with us, getting people familiar, and getting them to, start to learn about us and like us. But we also want to use that content to identify who is really in our target market. So I might be reaching an audience of all the right people. And by all the right people, I mean, marketers that all work with small business owners. So that's one of my avatars. I could have an audience of, 1 million small business marketers, but not 1 million of those people are going to be interested in what I do or working with me. Why? Because maybe some people, they're getting great results for their clients on their ads. They don't feel like they need the help. Everything is going really well and their business is growing. Okay, that is not necessarily my avatar for one of my offers that I'd be focusing on. So what I would want to do is maybe create a video ad that says something like, if you're struggling struggling to get great results for your local ad clients, try this. If somebody is struggling to get great results for their local ad clients, they're inclined to watch that video. The fact that they watch that video tells me, hey, you're not just the right avatar, you actually have the intent, or the timing is right. So you're going to be somebody that I really want to present my core offer to pretty quickly. So that's something that is really difficult to do in other mediums and other, marketing formats. So being able to segment not only by avatar, but by intent is an awesome way to use level 1 ads. So now we've got level 2. Level 2 is all about the offer. So the offer should also be tested to completely cold traffic, because if you can crack the code on pure cold traffic, at least getting them to convert on that front end ad. It doesn't mean they're buying that core product and service just yet, but it is that front end conversion. You're going to be a lot more likely to be able to scale that. However, your warm audience will typically convert on the front end anywhere between a third of the cost of the cold traffic leads, maybe half of the cost. They often convert in much higher percentages to the next step. So maybe it's the purchase, maybe it's that sales call, getting them to schedule that. And they also convert easier to the sale. So your warm audience, if you can build that, it will become the most reliable audience you can have. Let's say you have to turn off some of your campaigns. You have a month where cash flow is really limited, but you can't stop advertising. You should only be advertising to your warm traffic. You're going to be able to get so much more bang for your buck from that audience. They are your best future customers and your best brand ambassadors. Level 3 is retargeting. If we have social media campaigns running, we know that people are on social media while they could be doing anything else in the world. Okay. They could be at their kid's soccer game. They could be at the doctor's office. They could be driving, unfortunately. There is a million things that people could be doing while scrolling on social media. So they may click on that ad. They may stop and watch that video, but do they have the time to take the next step you're asking them to take? Maybe not. If you're asking them several questions, maybe they don't have time to fill it out right then. If you're asking them for an initial purchase or a booking, maybe they don't have their calendar handy or their credit card info handy. So if we just say, okay, looks like you weren't interested, we are missing out on a huge percentage of our customer base. That is where our retargeting ads come in. So giving people that second chance, giving people that reminder, and also saying, hey, let's say you came to my website, maybe organically, maybe through search, maybe through that TV commercial. If you didn't take that action that I was wanting you to take, I want to make sure that you get that other chance immediately. So it's not just for social ads, it's for all other forms of traffic if you set this up the right way, meaning that anything else you're doing on any other platform, you can monetize that a lot more effectively by setting up these level 3 ads. So each level has its own ad type. It has its own ad objective. It has its own way that you would want to present the creative or different messaging and copy that's going to work better. So they're all kind of standalone, but they should be working together. All 3 campaigns set up all the time if you really want this system to work as planned. And you can just think about level 1, it's the top of the funnel. Level 2, it's the middle of the funnel. Level 3, it's the bottom of the funnel. You're taking people from the top and you are filtering them down to the bottom, hoping that as many people as possible will enter your ecosystem on the back end so that you have a more direct way to communicate with them. And that's when converting them can become even easier, because you can rack up those touch points pretty quickly once you get them into your system. Whereas if you don't get them into your system, you have to consistently keep paying to advertise to them instead of sending them an email every day or sending them a text or giving them a call. So everything works in tandem with one another. The biggest mistake that I typically see is that everyone is level 2 ads, direct offer to cold traffic 100% of the time. They don't do level 1, they don't do level 3, and they never focus on building a warm audience. So they're constantly marketing to people who've never heard of them. And they're also not really gaining any of the insights about if this offer even works. They just keep testing different audiences or maybe new creative. They never really do the split testing, even if they were just going to cold traffic that is required to actually make that type of campaign work for them.
And if they do that, even if they get high sales, they're going to get low profitability.
Absolutely. And even if you make it work with cold traffic with level 2, you're just leaving money on the table by not doing the rest. Your cost per lead could be half. Your conversion rate could be double. You could be getting, so much more than what you're getting now. So people who are doing that, if you're listening and you're like, well, my ads to cold traffic work pretty well and I have never done any of this. Well, okay, how much better could it work if you did try and implement this? You're one of those rare exceptions if that is you, because typically it's not going to work that well. But if you come across, one of those campaigns or one of those businesses where it can work, then you want to maximize that. And that's kind of your next step, your next progression is saying, how can I take what's already working and make it even better?
Makes so much sense. And in the offline world, as a salesperson doing it, that's really, you made an initial cold call, you're continuing to follow up, you're making 8 to 12 touch points on the process, which we know that most people, only about 13% of the people selling ever even do. So, the worst yet is you're prepping your competition to actually take the sale because you're already educated them up to a certain point. The competition keeps going and bam, they end up with the sales. So I think that's
100%.
Certainly sage advice. Allie, last question. There's a lot being talked about today, like self-service sales, like marketers, Peter Drucker years ago said something to the effect, I'm kind of quoting, marketing's job is to make sales superfluous, right? So sales obsolete, basically. I disagree with that statement personally. So sorry, Mr. Drucker. Yeah. But there is some truth into where marketing can set it up to go from a lead to a marketing qualified lead to a sales ready lead. Where typically, and this may not even be a fair question, but where typically do you see like it's ready to hand off to a sales team? Like are there any indicators that somebody can say, well, yeah, that makes sense, and I should hand it off at that time, or I should keep nurturing them in level 1 and level 2 and level 3 till they get to the sales team?
Well, it does depend on what your sales process actually looks like. So are you trying to close sales without a human being, speaking to someone on the phone? Are you trying to drive people to a phone call? Those two strategies are going to look a lot different. If you are trying to get someone to a sales call and you want them to be a sales ready lead, number one, that education and that authority building on the front end is crucial. So the leads that we get that are the easiest closes once we get them on the phone are people who have watched multiple videos from me. So if somebody, let's say they just stumble upon me on my YouTube channel, they watch a couple of videos. By the time they've watched those videos, they are likely going to know that I am the exact person that can help them with what they need help with. They feel confident in my abilities because I've already shown them, here's how to do it. Here are what the results are, X, Y, Z. They feel good about the company, the person, the process, the problem that they need solved. By the time they get to that sales call, they're like, can I please just give you my money? So by far, the better job you do at level 1, the easier the job of the salesperson will be. Does that mean that somebody would have just taken a link, clicked on it, and checked out an $8,000 program without ever speaking to someone? Not typically. I mean, the trust still needs to be there. People typically still have questions, and you want to make sure that they're being taken care of and that they don't slip through the cracks. So even if marketing can make sales extremely easy, it does not mean that it will ever be obsolete. So something I've spoken with about to my coaches, what about doing group sales calls? So taking people who answer sales surveys in the perfect way. So it's not something you offer to everyone, but if they answer everything the exact way that you want them to, why do we even need to do one-on-ones? Why don't we do a group sales call where people can ask their questions and we can enroll them at the same time? So that might be an example of like a next level of trying to make it easier for a salesperson. That being said, most of your audience is going to feel much better speaking with someone if you sell anything high ticket. If you're not selling high ticket, you probably shouldn't even be directing them to a call. You should find the best way to sell it without a human being. But if we're talking high ticket, you want to make it so that they already have that understanding before they get on the call, and that salesperson does not need to convince them of anything. They're really there to make sure that they are a good fit for what you do, and that the next steps are clearly understood and that they feel welcome and excited to get started. So I would say level 1 is huge for sales. The Other thing is just really making that pre-qualification process spot on. So if you're getting started in digital marketing, I typically do not encourage you to make it super difficult for somebody to book a call with you because you need that data. You want to have those conversations. Those conversations give you information on your avatar. They give you that information on, is this offer correct? Did we message this properly? What can I do in my copy and my creative to attract the right person better and kind of repel the wrong person? So I do think that having as many conversations as possible is the best way to go early on. But once you kind of get that figured out, you may not want to spend all your time on the phone, or your sales team wants to make sure that they are only speaking with the best possible leads. So in doing that, you have pre-qualification surveys that ask people the questions that would be a hard disqualifier first and foremost. So if there's anything that's just like a, no, we don't work with you, or no, that budget doesn't work, or that industry doesn't work, or that mindset doesn't work, we want to go ahead and get those people out of the way so that they never even make it to the calendar. Typically, those pre-qualification surveys do not have to be very long or extensive. They just have to have the right questions and kind of segment people in the appropriate way. So it doesn't even mean that that person can't buy from you, but maybe they just don't need to talk to a salesperson. Maybe they need something like a do-it-yourself course, or something that, they can just check out online on their own without ever having that sales conversation. Another way that you can do it is even sell through DMs. So that's still a real person on the other end. You don't even have to get them on a sales call. If your lead is primed and really prepped from all of the groundwork that we've already laid, that DM sales conversation can be really easy, even for very expensive products and services. But most people they never make it there. They never get to the stage where they can do that. But that is what I would call, a very easy sale to make if you are somebody who's got pre-qualified leads through your marketing.
And Allie, just for everybody's knowledge, what is a DM?
A direct message. So this could be like a Facebook message. This could be Instagram, something like that.
Allie, thank you for being here on the CEO Sales Strategy. Thank you for, showing up and delivering your A game. I'm really grateful. I know people got a tremendous amount out of this. I've got 3 pages of notes myself. So thank you once again for being on the CEO Sales Strategy.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great. I hope everybody got a lot of value. And if you guys do want to learn any more, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I would love to chat with you and see what I can do to answer your questions.
And we'll be putting everything in the show notes for you folks. So go right there. Highly recommend you check out what she does. As you know, she's a professional. You could hear it on this episode here. Allie, have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Wow. Okay. So at this point, I hope you have pages of notes. I've got 3 myself. And here's the thing. When you understand the stages and steps, you'll know what to do and where to put it in the right order. Now, just like anything, if you don't have it in the right order, you're going to bump your head or hit your knee on something. So remember, you laid it out. You want to start out with learning about your ideal client avatar, right? Then you want to get your offer and so on through the steps and stages of this process. Do not do this in reverse. It doesn't work. That's like trying to say the alphabet backwards versus forwards. You can learn how to do that, but it's still not going to get you what you want. Everybody else is on the forwards to the backwards one, right? Now start in the beginning, end. You don't want to start with the end and go back to the beginning. This is different than Steve Covey says, we'll start with the end in mind. Now, you can start with, hey, I'd like to have this for a sales plan or a plan out there. But when you go into the marketing, follow the steps and stages that she has laid out in this particular aspect. Now, if you're going to use salespeople, I want to give you a couple of nuggets on that. If you're going to use salespeople, please understand that part of your job is to transfer the authority of you or your company to the salesperson in the perception of the buyer. What I mean by that is, if let's say that you're a person who's kind of a star in the business, and people identify with you as the owner and they identify you as the trustworthy person in that business, you've got to transfer some of that trustworthiness, if you will, some of your reputation, some of the rapport to your salespeople. So edify them before you take that transfer off to your salespeople. You will get a higher conversion rate. Now, there's so much here that I got. Like I said, I have 3 pages of notes. Make sure you're having touch points, continuous touch points with your clientele. There's study after study that show that an incoming lead will close in time online if it's targeted appropriately 62.5% of the time. However, month 1, only about 25% of that 62.5 actually closes. It takes up to 10 months on average to close all 62.5%. So what does that mean? Follow up, nurturing, right? Education, nurturing, follow up. You want to continuously keep that path going, because if you do not, you are only prepping your clientele, the potential buyers or the buyers, to actually buy from your competition. Because you follow up with them 2 or 3 times, then they're like, okay, I'm here, but I'm not ready yet. Then somebody else is following up with them and they're going to take that sale. And you're doing all the hard work, spending the money. And guess what? You're losing the sale to the competitor. So your competitor is going to thank you, but you're not going to have it in your bank account. So if you want more on the subject matter, please go to alliebloyd.com, alliebloydmedia.com, and check it out. If you have any questions for us, as always, or if you love this episode, let us know. If you have some subject matter you want on a particular episode, let us know. Send an email to youmatter, youmatter, at ceosalesstrategies.com. If you want to get yourself or someone you know to the top 1% of sales earners, or you want to grow the revenue in your company, reach out to me directly at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. My LinkedIn is Doug Brown 123 on LinkedIn. We have an upcoming university that we're going to be starting for teaching people to be in the top 1%. If you're interested in that, just reach out to the YouMatter at ceosalesstrategies.com. Let us know. We'll get you on the waiting list and we'll communicate in between, and we'll show you what we have. And if that's for you, great. We'll help you get there. As always, go out and sell something. Sell a lot of it. Play, win, win. That means you win, they win. If it's win, lose, walk away. You take a client on, there are no bad clients. There are only bad decisions on the sales process. And as always, go out and sell more than you figured. Till next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies saying, to your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit ceosalesstrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.